Hey, soul sister. Welcome to another episode of Midlife Love Out Loud. I am so excited because I have a dear friend and one of my mentors and the most extraordinary person on the planet for talking about honest sex. Shana James is in the house.
Woo! Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God, I'm so glad that you found some time to share your wisdom because we are diving into her new book called Honest Sex. We'll talk all about it. Let me tell you a little bit about Shana because she is extraordinary. I've known her for years. We started as she was one of my mentors, and now I'm happy to say she's my friend and I follow her, and she's just so brilliant. So let me tell you about her. She has humbly discovered, well, she's a relationship coach. So let me start there. And she has humbly discovered the cause of disconnection and distrust in relationships, as well as how to build trust and keep passion alive. Right. Like we need that. We need this. This is so important. She is the creator and the host of the Man Alive podcast with 250 plus episodes and more than 500,000 downloads, and has a TEDx talk, What 1,000 Men's Tears Reveal, about the crisis between men and women. And that TEDx talk blew my heart open. It was just so beautiful. And we'll make sure the link is in the show notes. And she recently released her book, Honest Sex, which, I let the cat out of the bag and as soon as I introduced you, but I'm so excited to talk about this. And her book is called Honest Sex, A Passionate Path to Deepen Connection and Keep Relationships Alive. And she's also published Power and Pleasure, A Man's Guide to Becoming a Confident and Satisfied Lover and Leader. She works with men and she helps a lot of men. And her book is filled with wisdom for you. So I really couldn't wait to have her here to share this amazing topic. Thank you, Shana. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So honest sex. You've been doing so many different things. What had you write about this topic?
Yeah, good question. I think as I was coaching people and living my own journey, because I live what I teach, right? So I'm not the kind of coach who's like, I'm a guru, I got it all together. I'm constantly in the flow of experimenting in my relationships and, exploring how vulnerable I can be and how intimacy can happen and all of that. And it was originally going to be a memoir of the overlaps between my spiritual practice, my sexual practice, including tantra and orgasmic meditation and all of that, and authentic relating, which is something that I facilitate and co-created back in the day, 20 years ago or so. And so I just had this sense of, as I was watching my clients go through relationships, it was like, oh, there's this interesting trifecta here of how we can create more intimacy, and that a lot of people I see as relationships are fading or passion is fading are like, well, let's try date night, or let's, try lingerie or new toys. And while those are amazing and fun, and I have nothing against them, my view is that it actually takes, a deeper dive. And that if we're able to get honest with each other in a mature way, it allows for this spontaneous intimacy and passion to continue building over time. It's not always easy. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say like, la, la, la,
Yeah. Here's the magic bullet.
Here's the magic bullet. It takes courage to actually be honest and reveal our vulnerability and share that intimately with someone else. But as a result, I think we feel safer. We trust our partners more. We're more invested, more loyal, we have more respect, and the passion really, builds from there.
Yeah. Yes. So well said. And you're talking about mature honesty, and being able to come from that place to have deeper intimacy, to bring that passion back. And yet I see that people really struggle with even knowing what's going on inside of them,
Totally.
what their honesty, you drop some words, tantra and orgasmic meditation and communication. And so, where does one start with that? Because not everybody has done some of those tools. They may not even know what Tantra or orgasmic meditation is.
Yeah.
And they may not even know what it is that's not working for them. So where do they start?
Yes. So, I mean, the reason I wrote the book, or the reason I divided it into the section. So the first section is, what is honesty and how do we mature our honesty? Second section is, what is sex actually? And then the third section is tools for communication. And, I think one of the chapters is how to talk about sex in a way that doesn't kill your sex life, right? Because a lot of people come to me and say, well, I'm afraid to talk about it. I don't want it to kill the passion. And I'm like, well, first of all, what's happening right now and how much are you talking about it, right?
Yeah.
So the book really could be a good place to start if you are not sure what's happening, but what you know is either you're in a relationship where the passion's fading, or you've been in a relationship, right? I'm divorced. Many women at our age and, 40s, 50s, 60s, there are a lot of divorces happening. And so as we start to look back and realize, okay, what do I want this time around? And how do I do it this time around such that I don't lose myself, that I'm more, I think especially at our age, it's like, how do I get honest with myself first?
Yeah.
In a deeper way, so that then I can actually communicate and create something that is self-honoring. So there's a chapter in the book around how honest am I being with myself? And there's some guidance there. One of the exercises that I've done at times in my life is a reflection at the end of the day. Where have I not been honest with myself today? And it can happen anything from, one of the examples is, I worked myself to the bone, and why am I working so hard? Why am I actually working so hard? Or somebody said something and it hurt my feelings, and I don't really know how to say so, but I know if I don't say so, it's going to be there. I give the metaphor of like a plate of glass between us. And every time there's something that comes up that we're not saying, but we're feeling and holding on to, it's like throwing a blob of paint on the glass. And so, I know if I don't say it, it's going to be one of those blobs of paint where I can't be as intimate, but I'm scared to say it. So really just starting slowly with getting honest with ourselves about our fears and our upsets and our desires, and, building on that.
Wow. I just at that visual of the pane of glass and the paint. I mean, here are women desiring intimacy, desiring that connection. And if we keep throwing that paint, suddenly not only is there the pane of glass, but we can't even see the person anymore. We're just seeing all this craziness.
Yes.
And I do see this often where, people that haven't necessarily learned these skills, it's a very easy go-to, and it's how we've been wired to point fingers and go, it's him.
Yep.
They don't know what they're doing. They're treating me like this. And what I'm hearing you talking about, which is, the song I sing a lot, which is, okay, maybe out there's something going on.
Yeah.
Maybe their behavior needs some guidance,
shift or change or guidance.
And let's start with what's going on inside of us first. And so I love that. It's like at the end of the day to really reflect, was I being really honest with myself? What isn't working? How might it be different for me? Because if we haven't done that, how on earth?
Then we can't ask for it. Right. And if we're blaming and shaming or attacking and saying like, I can't believe you're doing that over there, we're not getting to ask for what we really want or need, and I did this in my marriage. I nagged in a way, or I focused on the complaint. One of my favorite tools is really focusing on desires instead of complaints, right? I focused on complaining. Why is it not this way? This doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like if I spoke my desire, I would be betraying myself in a way, because I wanted him to know that it was painful for me and that it hurt. And what I've come to see is that we don't really ever have to complain. And not to say, we're all human. We all need to vent, and we can, figure out structures and ways to do that, sometimes with our partners, often with other people. But that when we're coming from our desires, that's actually, it feels better to us, and it feels better to the person receiving our desires, and we're more likely to have what we want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I sadly resonate when I think about my marriage, and, I didn't have the tools. I didn't know. And I complained a lot, and he always felt like he was falling short. And if I was able to really tune in and have a different language and come from this place of desire, and like, might we, explore and
Yes.
invite him
Would
into
you
the
be
journey?
willing? Might we? Yes.
Ah,
All of those questions. Yeah.
yeah. And you're talking with the guys, and you know how men think. So please correct me if I'm wrong. What I get from the men,
Yeah.
they want to give, they
They
want
do.
to provide pleasure.
Yeah.
And like, one of the most painful things for men is feeling like they're
They're
falling
letting us
short.
down or falling short. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's so
yeah.
true. And, I've worked with thousands of men at this point, and I've not, granted, I'll be honest and say, right there is a swath of men who come to me. The men who come to me recognize that they are they're willing to reflect on themselves and whatever, but I haven't met a man who doesn't have vulnerability and a desire to be better, or to grow, to support us. And I think so often someone actually told me recently, she read my book and she was like, I don't even remember, because this book is not specifically for men, so I'm not sure what she was talking about, but she
That's
was
why
like,
you're
sometimes,
here.
she said, sometimes I think you're too nice to men. And I was like,
Mm,
that's a fascinating statement. I tried to get more information, but she didn't give it to me. But I was like, okay, well, what I've found is that I can call a man into his highest and believe in him, even if I'm disappointed or let down or I'm struggling. It's not really nice to me. It's actually effective. I
yeah.
mean, it's more respectful and it's more self-responsible, but
Yeah.
it's also more effective to be kind and loving and assume the best. That's another one of the pieces I have in the book, is if we assume the best and then we get curious about where somebody fell short, it's really different than assuming the worst and then going into attack mode. And imagine yourself, like, when we receive attacks, we're not inspired to look deeper and see what our role was and how we could change
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
really assuming the best and getting curious is a way that men can then step up and see, oh, she believes in me, she's supporting me, and I fell short here, and let me figure out why, instead of going into their own shame spiral.
Absolutely. And I love the word curiosity. It opens doors and it keeps our heart open
Yeah.
versus the "you did me wrong" energy. And like
Yeah.
you said, if there's that anger and that defensiveness, that's going to create conflict versus what I call healthy conflict, healthy
Yes.
communication, where you can really share from that place of, this is what happened, and I really need to share this and see the best. I love that you brought that in, to see what's possible as a potential outcome,
Yeah.
higher level of love versus, oh my God, because where are you going to go with that? And that's
Yeah.
certainly going to
It's just
impact the
down.
intimacy. Yeah. Yeah.
A
Yeah.
downward
So
spiral. And the farther down we go, the more the gravitational pull pulls us, right? And so
yeah.
even one of the tools in the book is, instead of saying you're an asshole or I hate you or something, to really just even bring it back to your own body. Like, ooh, when you said that, I just felt my stomach clench.
Yes.
Or, something where it's like, okay, it's in the moment. It's not blaming or shaming. And then we stop that spiral from going downward. And then it gets to come back up.
Yeah. And you get to do it together.
Yeah.
I love, years ago, I heard intimacy as into me see. So
Yes.
if you want intimacy and you want connection, let them in
Yeah.
and let
Which
them
is
into your
terrifying. It can be
experience.
terrifying.
It's so true. It's like, oh, let me be vulnerable. And so that's the work. You and I were
Yeah.
talking about this before. It's like, you and I are not perfect. Sorry,
Yeah.
guys, we're not perfect. We're working these tools, and we're constantly going, what's going on inside of us and how can we continue to grow? How can we and
Yes.
our own consciousness so that we can communicate these things
Yeah.
in a way of integrity and build these connections with our beloveds?
Totally. And I had an interesting dynamic in my partnership this week where I went and saw family, and then I went into some dark, heavy places. And I admitted to him, like, I know how to do this myself. I can go in and I can kind of, find my way, and I know I'll come back out, but I'm not always the best at doing this in relationship. And so I said, but what I am realizing about myself, and this was a cool self-realization, was I don't think I'm a, like, this is going to sound weird, and not that we can't be a bummer or whatever, but it's like, I don't go down and in and then get snippy or pissy or, defensive or push him away. Like I go down and in, and then I'm like, okay, here's how I'm vulnerable, or here's, where I'm struggling. And so I think there really is a beautiful opportunity. And he's like, oh, well, I actually feel closer to you because I get to be a part of this. And he said, it would be a problem for me if you were going down and in, and then you got mean or, whatever. Like that's, nobody wants to be with that. But if we have enough self-reflection or capacity to witness ourselves, that we can go in, and we can also reveal and stay connected to someone we love, then like you said, we get to do it together, and we get to heal together and grow together. And that creates incredible amounts of trust and intimacy, and, and passion comes from there too.
Absolutely. As you're talking, I remember this clip of Tony Robbins. He was on stage. There was this woman, he was doing an intervention with a woman who was just like really edgy and angry and mad. And he brought like, I don't know, 5 or 6 men up on the stage, and she's bitching and moaning and complaining. And, you could see all of the men's body language, their arms are crossed and they're just kind of like listening to this woman going at it. And then he did his magic, and she dropped into her emotions.
Aww.
And she got so open and so vulnerable. And you just saw the men melt. Yeah. And you saw the men's, their arms drop.
Posture change.
And then they were leaning in. And then he asked the guys, like what happened? He was like, they were like, we just wanted to hug her. We wanted to like lean in and support her. And at the end of the day, I say this often to the women I work with, men are not these demons. They're not these horrible people, they're just regular, they're human beings that, yes, they're wired differently, and they're human beings. They're afraid of rejection too. Yeah,
and they don't afraid
feel
of
like they're falling. Oh my God. Right. And they get rejected way more
all
than
the time,
in the online dating realm, and that's why when I do my events, I bring in guys for my man panel, because I want them to hear what they're going through, so they can have some compassion. Because it really is dance of the hearts, of human beings. Yeah.
I remember when I was leading workshops in person more, and when I was younger, because I started in my 20s, and some of the guys who came were part of the pickup community, which was like, I don't know if you know this, but there was a group of men out there long ago. I think it's still happening, but they've actually evolved and matured, where they were teaching guys how to pick up women and what the right thing to say and all that. And I was like disgusted. I was like, I can't believe these men are going to be like gross, And they came, and my heart just burst open, because I was like, oh, they're just trying to have love like any of the rest of us. And they're struggling, and women aren't saying yes to them, and they don't know why, and nobody's willing to tell them, and they can either go to therapy, or what's the other option, right? Like, so they were drawn to someone who had a solution, and granted, that solution was not great, but there were seeds of wisdom in there. And so I got to really see that whatever facade a man is putting up, if we relate to the deeper man we know in there, who is actually vulnerable, if we communicate that way, and he's not willing to go there, he's not able, then maybe we move on. But if we haven't done that yet, then there's more to go, right? There's more possible than what we're experiencing.
All right, Shana, here it is. We're talking about honest sex. Let's go right to the sex part. Like, what's your definition of what sex actually is, and what are most people doing?
Yeah. Okay. So my definition of what sex actually is that it's a way for us to play with as many aspects of ourselves as possible. And it could be with ourselves, because we do have sex with ourselves, and it could be with another. But when you think about the levels of, there's emotional, energetic, physical, like there's the soul, right? To me, instead of a, we're trying to get somewhere orientation, it's like, how can we be as present as possible with as much of ourselves as possible? And then if there's another person, with them too. So I talk about one-dimensional sex versus four-dimensional sex, or kind of fast food versus gourmet sex. And so the common culture, I mean, I didn't learn about this. I have a story in there where I actually started learning about orgasm and sex and pleasure through a conversation I had with a woman in a bathroom. And I was like, damn, woman, you are radiant. Like, what is going on with you? You have to tell me, So I said, most people aren't that lucky to have a conversation in a bathroom that leads to a lifetime of amazing sex. But, that's part of why I wrote the book. And so the
Yeah.
one-dimensional version, right, is like, okay, we're two physical beings here, and we're in our own body, and we're aware of our own bodies, and there's physical pleasure. Usually it's not bad, right? It's like, there's nothing wrong with it. But on the 4-dimensional level, we can feel our own physicality and our own emotions and our own energies and our own soul. And we can also start to expand to feel our partners, all of that. So I can feel my partner's experience within my own body and heart and soul. And then, there's the merging and the playing and the spontaneity. And as we work through our shame of I'm too much, I'm too little, I'm too much of a slut, I'm too much of a prude, as we do the shadow work that I know you do so beautifully with women and with people, then we are freer to be connected and to know that anything that arises is a doorway to connection with a partner. And so there's a chapter that's called The Myth of Happy Sex. Like, we don't actually have to be happy to have sex. We don't have to get back to happy. We don't have to get our partners back to happy. We can cry and feel rage and feel all these kinds of things. And sex can be a beautiful healing and way to connect more deeply with someone.
So well said. I love that you you had this conversation with someone, and I was reading in your book. You were talking with Susan. I'm trying to remember her last name. Braxton.
Oh, Susan Bratton, the
Bratton.
orgasmonaut.
Bratton. Yeah. And yes, and and how she was talking about the 14 different types of orgasm, and you were sharing your journey around discovering all these different types of orgasm.
Godgasms and heartgasms and
right. I remember the first time I had a laughgasm.
Oh yes, I love it.
Oh my God. And it was hysterical. I just couldn't stop laughing. And from that point on, my partner at the time was like, you had a laughgasm. I'm like, I did.
I did. That's
it was just so much joy. And I was like, I couldn't stop.
Yes.
And that there's just so much to explore. And when you can drop in to this sacred place of exploration,
it's so beautiful. The sky's the limit, and that it doesn't have to be physical either. So, if you're in a mood where you're like, I don't actually want to be touched, you can breathe together. You can, or maybe little touching. It doesn't have to be genital touching, right? Like, to me, our whole body and energy fields, we can be having sex sitting next to each other without actually having genital contact or genital penetration. And so the more we expand our definition of what sex is, and I actually was just listening to a podcast the other day where the woman said, she's like, I think of writing love letters as sex and all these different things. Like, anytime we're sharing that kind of energy and sensuality and revealing and opening, it is a kind of sex. And so then we don't have to limit it to, especially in women who've had trauma or who have a hard time orgasming or any of those things. Like, we could breathe, we can massage each other, we can start in these places that make it easier. And when we can start to be able to talk to our partners too, and we get to say, I need something to go slower, or I want to have these experiences in addition to those experiences. And when we aren't ashamed of that, then we get more of what we want.
Absolutely. And again, intimacy. And, and I've shared this on other podcasts. Orgasm has been a challenge for me, and it's, it's still a journey. And so much of it was the shame of I'm broken. Something's wrong with me. I'm not good enough, blah, blah, blah. And through the years of loving myself and, getting comfortable in my own body, and then being able to share it with my partner in a way that's like, you're not doing anything wrong. It's not your job to give me an orgasm, but to be able to invite them into my journey, my process, what feels good to me, as a playful invitation and being vulnerable in my heart space, that has worked out pretty nicely.
Yes, I love it. I love it. And there's no shame in, no shame and even celebration. And like, my partner and I are, we do little clinics sometimes. It's like, okay, let's experiment, and we'll take 10 minutes to just see, how do you like this? Because when you're in the moment in sex, and I have a chapter 2 that's, okay, what to talk about before, what to talk about during, what to talk about after.
Timing is a big thing.
Yeah. And not to make yourself wrong. You can talk about anything at any time. And the lengthier discussions about, your fantasies and what you really like and don't like, it's often easier to do before or after than it is in the middle.
Right.
But if you set up a time where you're like, oh, tonight we're going to explore your body. Tomorrow night, we're going to take 10 minutes to explore my body. There's a context around it and a welcoming, and oh, my partner wants to hear this. Then, oh my gosh. I mean, again, the sky's the limit, where now imagine if you're used to having sex and you're like, yeah, I guess it's okay, but hopefully it'll move on the next minute, something will get better. So I'm not going to say anything, versus either learning to speak up in the moment without the shame, or, oh, now that we've done that little clinic, my partner knows that I like it a little slower and a little lighter. And so now again, there's the upward spiral of, instead of the moments of like, oh yeah, that was good. Then there's kind of lift off of, oh my gosh, we're doing this together, and the pleasure gets to rise, and I don't have to be ashamed of any of it.
Oh, so true. Two things that came to mind. One is, I remember years ago, I had a lover, and I don't know, conversation before or after, certainly not during, but there was a conversation where it was an invitation of, are you, the general gist of, are you open to me telling you more about what makes me feel good, And his eyes just like bulged in like, yes, please.
Please. That's like a secret.
Give me the handbook to your body, so I don't have to figure it out and feel, so there's something to be said about, hey, can I offer you a little like, ooh, I really love this and I would love to have more of that. So number one, how amazing. So many people would love that if you say it in a way that's an invitation and not you're doing something wrong. So
exactly. And men especially, like, they want that, but they're terrified to ask for it because they don't want to look like they don't know what they're doing. And then they think there's something wrong with them.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing you were saying about the clinic and, having certain time, it is so amazing to have a time set where you could just relax and know what you're doing. So if you know
goal, and you're not trying to orgasm, you're like,
here's some time for us to explore this, or I'm just going to give you all the attention right now. You don't have to do anything, or you could just receive. It's like permission to just relax and receive. That has been invaluable.
Yes, and I'd say we all need that. Yeah, like most men have a hard time receiving, who I've worked with. It's one of my favorite things to work on, with men, because there are men who are pleasers, who try to please, but it doesn't quite work, because then they lose themselves and they're not connected to their bodies. They're trying to make you happy. And then you're like, but it's not making me happy. Well, what's going on here? So we all need to learn to receive better, I think.
Yeah. So there's so much. And I love all the nuances in your book, because again, it's not just knowing there are different type of orgasms, and it's good to be able to know yourself. You have some amazing tools in your book that are so powerful. So I'm thrilled to let people know about your book. I also know that you have a special gift for this soul sister of ours.
Yeah. So if you go to my webpage, which is Shana James Coaching, and Shana is SHANA. And if you do the, /honest-sex, you can get chapter sex. That's hilarious. Like, chapter 6, which is what is sex actually. So, if you're kind of like, oh, this sounds interesting, I don't know, maybe it's too much, maybe I don't know, I don't know if this is for me, check out chapter 6. You'll get a sense of my writing style. And one of the things people have been appreciating is that I share a lot of personal, vulnerable stories in there. And I've had people say to me like, oh, this is not like most books that people write where, there's a lot of experts quoted and a lot of psychologists and spiritual teachers and sex teachers and all that. But I really, I think because it was originally going to be a memoir, and because I think one of the things that I really like to do in the world is go first and be vulnerable first, because I find that then it creates that intimacy, and people are more likely to follow and feel safer to say, oh, me too, I've had this experience. And so there are a lot of stories in there where, I talk about my struggles and how I work with them, and to give encouragement.
Beautiful. So beautiful. We will definitely put that link in the notes so that people can grab it. Any last words about anything we've talked about today around relationship, intimacy, sex, communication, anything else you'd like to share with the soul sister?
I think I just want to give you sister hope, wherever you are, you can have what you want, even if it feels like it's far away, or even if it feels like, certain parts of your relationship are beautiful and other parts are really disappointing, or if you've been really disappointed in your past relationships and you're single now, and, it's possible. And the more you know and love yourself, the more you do the work, to release the shame, or that there's anything wrong with you. There's nothing fucking wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with me. I need reminders of that. Junie needs, we all need reminders of that. But honestly, there's nothing wrong with us.
Yeah.
And when we really do find that place inside of ourselves where we recognize that and love ourselves, then we get to play on, heart level, soul level, like the deepest intimacy possible. And I want that for you.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Nothing wrong with you, and play. And yeah, what do you desire? And you can have it. It's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for the work that you're
Thank
doing.
you.
And thank you for coming on and sharing this. And your book is brilliant. I'm so thrilled to be able to let people know about it.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. And thank you for all the ways you love these women and support them to grow and heal and love themselves.
Thank you. All right, Soul Sister, that's our episode for today. I know you got a lot out of it. Remember to get her chapter, read it, study it. Who doesn't want to
playfully study it?
Playfully study
Play
it,
with it.
practice it. And if you got some golden nuggets from this, and I'm sure you did, share it with a soul sister that might need a little support in this realm. And please subscribe and like this podcast so you don't miss anything and other people can know that there's value here. All right, until we meet again. Mwah.